Hi everybody and big welcome to a cEDH deck tech video for Mono Red Purphoros God of the Forge. But why am I making a deck tech video of Purphoros? You see, this is my girlfriend's deck, and since I basically started making YouTube videos, I've tried to make her play cEDH. But in like 3 or 2 years back, continuously I've been trying to tell her there are better commanders, Purphoros isn't really struggling, but she wants to play Purphoros because that is the commander that she really likes, and in the end you should play what you really like. However, over time a lot of things have happened for cEDH, a lot of cool commanders are now starting to be viable, something you can actually bring to a battle table. For example, I've recently made this video where I talk about what makes a cEDH commander viable. And the big message in that video is that today, commanders doesn't need to solve all the problems. Usually back in the days, your commander have to have a lot of card draw and a lot of colors on it to actually work. But now that they've got so many good, great cards, especially red cards, the 99 can solve most problems. So the purpose of this video is to kind of showcase that Purphoros God of the Forge is somewhat viable, something you could bring to a table now. And I'm kind of trying to showcase to my girlfriend that yeah, you can bring Purphoros to a cEDH table, you have a chance of winning with it, it's great, it kind of works. But over the years I've also listened to a bunch of her advice. For example, she often talks about that you lack interaction with Purphoros, so you need your opponents to play out each other. And then you usually win with a bomb spell, like something like Mere Battlesphere. But that problem with not having enough interaction is actually something that has started to change. Red has gotten some really cool new cards that are great for interacting a little bit here and there, similar to how green and white plays stacks. Also, Anger of the Gods, or well, board wipe in general, have also started to become better because we're more leaning towards creatures, more and more in the current cEDH metagame. And honestly, Purphoros doesn't really care about his creatures. They need to come into play, but then they can go away. We can board wipe them, that's fine. For example, one of my girlfriend's big finishers is Mog Infestation. So destroy all creature target player controls, usually target herself. For each creature that die this way, create 2 red goblin creature tokens, which is basically doubling up her creature amount, but also creating a lot of ETBs for your Purphoros. But you could use this as a single target player board wipe. Well, you're gonna give your opponent a lot of 1/1s, but most cEDH decks doesn't really care or can't really use all of these 1/1s. So I actually think this is a very cool multi-purpose tool. Another really cool red card I want to give a shout out to, Wild Ricochet, 4 mana, really expensive, but when it resolves it just does so much. And people don't really consider red having cool instant speed interaction. Well, this is a spell that absolutely dominates in counterspell war and also steal value and just creates havoc among the board state. You choose new targets for an instant or sorcery, then you create a copy and choose new target for that one as well. You also have things like Furious Storm, Dual Caster Mage, and Dire Fleet Daredevil. And by the way, Dire Fleet Daredevil is actually growing a little bit in power level as they are becoming more and better instants and sorceries that we can steal with this human pirate. So we do have a lot of cool interaction, and we will look at more soon. But another big problem that Purphoros often talks about is that in Mono Red we don't have enough value for the late game versus blue and green. We have a bad card draw, and we have bad ramp. But backtracking a little bit to the video that I talked about, remember, Purphoros doesn't draw any cards. Whenever a creature comes into play, you will deal 2 damage to all of your opponents. That's great, that's our finisher. It's literally like a win con in the command zone, so the 99 have to solve that card draw and ramp problem. And now today Mono Red has a lot of really great tools. Correction, Mono Red actually has somewhat of the best. Here we have Dockside Extortionist, an amazing Mono Red creature that is just absolutely auto-include in whenever you're playing red. People play red because of Dockside Extortionist's existence. Ragavan, an incredible strong mana dork, well, it actually falls off in power level or well, viability during like late game stages, because eventually people will have blockers, but like a turn 1 Ragavan is usually amazing. But we have way more. We have things like Jeska's Will, which is both card draw and ramp, or well, Ragavan is also a little bit both card draw and ramp, mostly ramp on Ragavan. Jeska's Will, absolutely amazing. You could use that to get your commander into play faster. We have a Magda, Brazen Outlaw, great at creating mana, treasures, and you could use it to basically tutor out big explosive artifacts. We're gonna play a lot of artifacts inside this deck. And Underworld Breach, which is... And I would like to emphasize that you don't need to have a combo going for you with your Underworld Breach. It is just a great card on its own, gaining a lot of value back from the graveyard, great in the late game stage. We also have Jeweled Lotus, that is great, that is giving us a turn 1 Purphoros. This is a commander focused deck, and so that is very important. We also have Birgi, which can become the Harnfell Horn, that is giving you potential lots of card draw by discarding cards, flipping 2 cards from top of your library, and you may play those cards this turn, or just go Birgi instead, and you have a great ritual creature when you're just sitting there and storming off things. There's also a pretty cool infinite combo with Birgi and Grinding Ignis. Grinding Ignis is a free mana cost creature 2/2, so whenever it comes into play, you will deal 2 damage with Purphoros, that is key. You can pay 1 red mana to return Grinding Ignis to the owner's hand, and then you add its casting cost. So, with this and Purphoros, you have 1 red mana, deal 2 damage to all opponents. Great, but with Birgi, you gain a mana when you cast Grinding Ignis, which means it goes infinite. You can sit there and cast Grinding Ignis infinitely. We also have Urza's Saga, that is a great new card that is helping you with some ramp. You can transform it later into a Soul Ring, but also you can find Skull Clamp, and we really need card draw. We don't really need to care about our creatures. We can easily produce goblins, 1/1s here and there, that we sacrifice into Skull Clamp to basically draw into more gas and more power. We also have Inventor Sphere that can find some very key artifacts like Skull Clamp. A little bit sad finding Skull Clamp with Inventor Sphere, but if you really need that card draw, that's something you can do. We also have some abstract stuff like Bedlam Reveler. I actually like it. We usually empty our hand depending on the build, and you don't really need to pay that much mana for it depending on the build if you're playing a lot of instants and sorceries. And when it comes to play, you will draw 3 cards, that's great value, and it's an ETB creature. We also have Cursed Mirror, and I actually think this one is auto-include because there's docksides everywhere around the map. It's usually something that becomes a dockside, but you can copy anything. You can copy a creature like Bedlam Reveler, you can copy a creature an opponent controls that you want to have a temporary ETB effect from, or any cool things of the sort, and afterwards it becomes a mana rock. We also have Fury Storm. I talked about Wild Ricochet before, how it's quite great sometimes, we're gonna sit there and interact greatly, and the Storm Dwarf. Now, depending on the build, you can have a lot of instant sorcerers inside the decks and still have a functional Purphoros deck. You do want to have a lot of creatures, but there are a lot of really cool instants and sorceries as well that can function with Purphoros. Purphoros is, in my opinion, can be built in quite a lot of different ways, and Stormkiln Artist, the Storm Dwarf, will create a treasure whenever you cast or copy a spell, and these two actually go infinite. Yes, they do. I don't think they're supposed to do, and honestly I think it's a mistake from Wizard of the Coast, because Fury Storm can actually go infinite on its own, by itself, only that. So, whenever you cast this, you create a copy. If you cast your commander once, that's enough. So, the copy can target Fury Storm. The original Fury Storm that you casted, the card itself can target whatever, it doesn't really matter. Then the copy will be created afterwards, and at that one can target Fury Storm. Now the copy is now creating another copy, and that copy can then target the original Fury Storm again. So Fury Storm, the original card, will never resolve, and you will sit there and copy Fury Storm infinitely. And that isn't supposed to do anything. They even say so that it won't really do anything. For example, the copy is created on the stack, so it's not casted, and therefore shouldn't do anything because most triggers is on cast. Abilities that trigger when a player casts a spell won't trigger, which means, for example, Fury Storm copies may target Fury Storm itself. They literally say that right here, but this won't trigger the copy when the ability is casted, except that Storm Dwarf and other creatures or other things that trigger when you copy something will trigger. Fury Storm was basically printed before Storm Dwarf because something Wizards of the Coast have actually said that no card should ever go infinite on itself. But now that is actually possible. In any case, with this you have infinite treasures and you will have 2 copies of whatever spell you basically targeted to begin with. And because both cards are just great individually on their own, you could easily throw in this combo inside the deck. We have the amazing card Wandering Archaic, 5 CMC, colorless Hate Bear, great for mid-range decks, great for a deck that wanna control the game versus instant and sorceries, as well as gaining value whenever someone is doing something. For example, someone is casting a Brainstorm, they have to pay 2, or you also gain that Brainstorm. Small little value that just happens here and there. It's the colorless version of Heuristic Study. Deflecting Sword, mono red spell, absolutely amazing, always auto-included whenever you're playing red. Professional Face Breaker, in my opinion, almost an auto-include whenever you're playing red. Great card overall for mid-range decks that wanna acquire some value. For 3 mana you get a 2/3 with Menace that reads whenever a player is dealt combat damage by a creature, you create a treasure. However, if you hit 3 players, you will trigger 3 times because it triggers on individual players. It doesn't trigger if you're attacking the same player with multiple creatures, it just triggers if a creature or more hit that player. So if you hit 3 players, 3 treasures. But also you can sacrifice treasures to basically gain value, exiling the top card of your library, and you may play it this turn. So this is a card that has both ramp, mana value acceleration, and card draw at the same time, all in one card. But I have some more advice from the Purphoros master. Don't make Purphoros into a creature. You see, Purphoros is in fact an indestructible enchantment, and that is very tricky to get rid of. But if you make this into a creature, it's a little bit easier because suddenly more cards are being capable of getting rid of it. It can suddenly be swapped. That's terrible. Gilded Drake is absolutely amazing, auto-include everywhere, and if someone would steal your Purphoros, that's terrible. Swords to Plowshare is starting to see more and more play because people are playing more and more key creatures that they need to destroy, and it's a great tool to get rid of your Purphoros if Purphoros is a creature. Then there are some more rare variants like Humility, each creature loses all abilities and is a 1/1. Well, we can absolutely play through Humility because we don't really care, once again, about the creatures. This is actually amazing. As if you had Purphoros, you might almost play Humility. Really. I could almost see that. Because, once again, you can sacrifice your creatures into your Skull Clamp, your Purphoros will still work, and all your opponents will struggle a lot versus Humility. Just don't turn Purphoros into a creature, remember that part. This means that you do want to play a lot of artifacts inside this deck, so you're avoiding creating that devotion, or well, have a lot of creatures with only 1 pip of red. And here there's some potential build differentiations. You could go for something like a Mystic Forge build. This is also a great card draw option for you. You can tweak what you're top decking, and you can just dig through your deck if your deck contains a lot of artifact, which this deck absolutely could control a mass amount of. For example, a personal favorite of mine, Lodestone Golem. A creature, artifact creature Hate Bear, will create an ETB effect, won't increase your devotion, and will increase the casting cost of non-creature spells. That's great, we don't really cast that many non-creature spells, and if you're focusing on artifacts, we definitely don't get hurt by this thing. Considering we're in a metagame where a lot of people are playing ad nauseam and want to have rule of law effects, this is a great card versus the current metagame, depending on like small scenarios here and there, but very great right now. We can also be a little bit creative here. We have something like Irrepur Aether Grid, a card I really love, that you can use to tap 2 untapped artifacts to deal 1 damage to a creature or player. And if we're going for the artifact theme, this could be amazing if you're building that huge industry. And by the way, Magda here would be great. Now, I've talked a lot about different potential builds. I've talked about pure red Hate Bear stuff. I talked about instant speed with a Storm Dwarf and such. I've talked about artifact focus deck, but you can tweak it however you want to. I think there's a lot of different cool potentials. I think Purphoros can be quite adaptive. What we're basically building here is just a great mono red deck in general, and just including what would be amazing for that. And then your commanders just being Purphoros, God of the Forge. Now, as always, in the description below of the video, I will share a link to my Purphoros God of the Forge deck list, how I've tweaked it. I'm actually going for a very typical mono red Purphoros, just hate bears, great cards individually on their own, and just slamming that value. Take care, guys! I'll see you next time. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you enjoyed the video. If you like what I do and you wanna support me, feel free to share my videos or even checking out my Patreon page. Also, purchasing cards from the TCG Players website using the affiliate link in the description below of the video will also help the channel grow. So a big thank you to all of you.